A brand new poll shows that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are locked in a dead heat in the state of Minnesota. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video. And today, it is time to talk about the 2024 presidential election because everyone, there is a legitimate chance that Donald Trump could flip the state of Minnesota in 2024. Yeah, a state that hasn't voted Republican since Nixon, and Biden won by 7 points in 2020. Donald Trump has a legitimate chance of winning. This is just crazy to say on paper, I know, but a brand new poll from Survey USA, which, mind you, in the state of Minnesota was spot on in 2020, shows that Trump and Biden are in a dead heat. Now, before we continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Again, folks, all support is greatly appreciated, and yeah. Now, let's be clear. I am not saying that Donald Trump has a 100% chance of winning Minnesota. Hell, I still think Joe Biden is the clear favorite in the state. But at some point, when you get the most accurate pollster of 2020 in Minnesota saying that, hey, this is a dead heat. Like, this is not just a 6-point victory for Biden. He's up by only 2. There is a possibility that Donald Trump could win Minnesota in 2024. So let's get right into it. For our third poll in a row, President Joe Biden and Donald Trump are locked in a statistical dead heat. According to our latest exclusive KSTP Survey USA poll of Minnesota voters, Biden leads Trump 44% to 42%, with 11% saying they'll vote for another candidate and 4% undecided. The poll has a credibility interval, similar to a margin of error, of 4.9%. So in other words, it's a tied race. When you have a margin of error of 5%, let's just round up, 5%, you could say 4.9, doesn't matter. When Biden has a 2% lead over Trump, a 5% margin of error, that means the race is tied. Now, if you look back at 2020, Trump got around 45% of the vote. Right now, he's getting around 42%. So on paper, that should be a big warning sign for him. The problem for Biden is he got 52% of the vote here. He's down to 44%. And this is the thing about Minnesota that was a big question mark for 2024. How would RFK, Jill Stein, Cornel West, etc. impact Biden in Minnesota? Because Minnesota, the rule of thumb is if an independent gets around 8 to 10% of the vote, a Republican has a good shot of winning. Right now, independents are getting 11% of the vote. When you have a 2-point race in a presidential year, you got a competitive state. Carleton College political analyst Steve Schreier said, one that both campaigns will probably pay attention to. And that probably explains why Biden's investing money in Minnesota. People are not talking about that. Yeah, he's putting quite a bit of money into the state, which on paper doesn't make much sense. Like, okay, you won by 7 points here in 2020. It makes sense to invest some money. But the amount of money that he's spending, you would think this is a down-the-wire race. And according to this poll, yeah, this is a 50-50 race as of now. I'm not saying that's going to hold till November, but right now, in April of 2024, it appears that the state of Minnesota is anyone's game. Most pollsters and political pundits don't consider Minnesota to be among the battleground states where the winner of the presidency could be determined. Those states are generally considered to be Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And they're right. Minnesota will not determine the presidency. It just won't. It's one of those states where if Trump wins Minnesota, he's sweeping the Rust Belt. He's winning Nevada at that point. You know, he won easily. Shire says that might change after 3 straight KSTP Survey USA polls show Biden leading by margins of 3, 4, and 2 points, all within the margin of error. And remember, Survey USA in Minnesota back in 2020 was spot on. They had it like Biden plus 6, it was Biden plus 7. They are one of the best pollsters in Minnesota, at least from 2020. And right now, they have it within the margin of error. And funny enough, they actually show that Trump is gaining on Biden since the last poll. The last poll had Biden up by 4. Now he's up by only 2. Another conspiracy debunked, by the way. I mean, every time these people say, well, Trump is collapsing the polls, they've said this 5 times now this cycle. Not just this cycle. The past, 2 months. Every time they say this, a poll from, say, Minnesota comes out that shows, oh, by the way, Trump's going up against Biden. A lot of pundits and pollsters assume that Minnesota is a safe Democratic state in 2024, Shire said. This poll indicates that is not the case. And I agree with the first part. I thought it was basically a safe state. Maybe it could be closer than 2020, but I never expected it to be this close. I thought, okay, instead of losing by 7 points, Trump loses the state by 4 or 5. Right now, the poll indicates, no, he's down by 2. In 2016, Clinton beat Trump in Minnesota by 1.5 points, and Biden beat Trump in 2020 by 7 points. And no one mentions that, the fact that Clinton barely won the state back in 2016. Now, to be fair, that was because Gary Johnson and Jill Stein got a large chunk of the vote. But that kind of proves the theory that if independents get 7-8% of the vote, more like 10 at this point, Minnesota could be won by the Republican Party. And right now, 2024 is much closer to 2016 with third-party candidates than 2020. Because 2020, the candidates either sucked or they weren't on the ballot. And that's why Biden was able to win by 7 points, in large part because independents were not a factor in 2020. Geographically, the 2024 race is a tale of 2 Minnesotas. Biden dominates the Twin Cities and the inner ring suburbs 49% to 34%. However, Trump has big leads everywhere else, leading by 13 points in southern Minnesota, 28 points in western Minnesota, and 8 points in northeastern Minnesota. We don't have 1 Minnesota in this poll. We have 2, Shire said. We have the Twin Cities and the inner ring suburbs that are heavily blue and Democratic, and the further away you get from that, the more conservative and Republican is the state. And this is the problem for Biden in Minnesota, the Twin Cities. Now, back in 2020, his entire margin of victory, and then some, came from one county, Hennepin County. This is where Minneapolis is, and Biden won it by 332,000 votes. He won the state by around 230,000 votes. One county gave Biden his entire margin of victory, and he won it by over 40 points. Same thing to Ramsey. He won it by over 45%. He won it by 140,000 votes. Place like Washington, he won by 9, but that's still 16,000 extra votes. Dakota, won by 14%, won by 40,000 votes. This is where Biden's entire margin of victory came from, and he has a big fat problem. And we saw this back in the primary. Biden did absolutely pathetic in the Minneapolis area. Look at this. 26% uncommitted. Ramsey, 24% uncommitted. Anacoa, 20% uncommitted. Rice, 22% uncommitted. And there's a lot of votes here. I mean, Hennepin, 21,000 Democrats voted uncommitted. Statewide, 45,000 decided to vote against Biden and vote uncommitted. And the reason for him doing so bad in the primary is 2 things. 1, Minnesota has a lot of progressives. Obviously, you got Minneapolis. You're going to have a bunch of white progressives that are going to vote for uncommitted because ceasefire. But number 2, Minneapolis has a lot of Muslims. Same thing with the white progressives. They want a ceasefire in Israel. And they're not happy with how Biden has handled the war. So they voted uncommitted. That's a double whammy. There's a lot of progressives, a lot of Muslims in Minnesota. And I guarantee you, those Muslims and white progressives alone in Minneapolis could be the difference between Biden winning the state and losing it. But that's the first reason for why Biden has some problems here. And that's the major one, because that's his entire margin of victory. One county. If just say 100,000 Democrats don't vote third party, or hell, even flip to Trump, just, here and there, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, Biden's margin of victory would be only 100,000 votes. And that's assuming the same thing doesn't happen in Ramsey, Dakota, Washington, Anacoa. But that's the first reason. The second reason, I think this is one part that no one mentions when talking about Minnesota, and that's the fact that Republicans have plenty of room to grow in the rest of the state. I mean, look at these rural counties. They're not like South Dakota or North Dakota or hell, even Iowa or even Nebraska. They're light red. Look at some of these areas. Look at Grant County. R plus 27. Which, yeah, that's Republican, but that's not deep red. That's not like what you would see in Missouri, what you would see in Indiana, even Ohio and Pennsylvania. It's just light red. Now, granted, I'm not saying that, every single voter lives in the rest of the state, but if Trump does, say, 10 points better in the rest of the state, and if just 100,000 Democrats from Minneapolis vote third party, don't vote, or even flip to Trump, that could be enough for Trump to win the state of Minnesota. And that's why it's not an unrealistic scenario. I mean, people make it sound like that's impossible. There's no way that Republicans could do all of that. Really? You're telling me that a 10-point swing in the rest of the state and just Hennepin County not turn out for Biden, that's unrealistic? It is entirely possible if the war in Israel continues and these progressives and Muslims just refuse to vote for Biden. I don't get why this is such a crazy theory. And we now know from the polling data, which, by the way, this pollster was spot on in 2020, that the race is within the margin of error. And Trump has a legitimate chance of winning. So, if he somehow does win Minnesota, though, that all but guarantees he's won. Because if he's winning Minnesota, he's winning a state like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. There's just no way in hell he wins Minnesota before Wisconsin, before any of the Rust Belt states. That's just not going to happen. But if he somehow does win it, I don't think it's going to be a Republican state. Just the simple fact that Republicans have a problem of even winning Minnesota without independence. That's the only reason Trump could win the state in 2024, and it seems like that's happening. Now, we gotta wait for the ballot access stuff. We gotta see if RFK really does make the ballot, but it appears that if he does, Trump has a shot at winning Minnesota, which I thought was not impossible, but so unlikely that I didn't even talk about it. Well, we have a possibility of it happening this year. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.